We are living during a critical time on this earth, and we're witnessing how important our connection is to our bodies and our spirits, our planet, and one another.
And we're recognizing that to stand in our truth means honoring the full spectrum of our emotional human experience.
We're seeking answers in all the stories and medicine that will support us and guide us as we create the safety we need to face our fears and to feel our feels.
And we cannot do this alone. Community, connection, and compassion are at the heart of our collective healing.
I'm Ellen, a breathwork and medicine companion and creator of Trip with Ellen.
And I'm Sam, an integrative energy therapist and creator of Involution Healing. Welcome. Journey with us.
This is Woo New.
This is going to be a really exciting episode, and it's going to be a very special episode because today I'm going to be asking Ellen about her recent Going with Grace Death Doula intensive retreat with Doula Arthur that she just returned from. How long ago was it now, Elle?
Oh my gosh, it was like just about a month. Yeah, because we were
a month ago now. I can't believe it's been a month.
Holy moly, I can't either.
Yeah, I just, and we'll definitely want to jump back to the beginning because even as I was thinking about it earlier, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember exactly when this started, but there were messages coming through from the very beginning. And it's been so inspiring just to see you step into this space and really to answer the call and just, follow the breadcrumbs from the universe and really find your purpose in such a beautiful and unique way. So I'm super excited to talk about it today. There are so many questions. I can't wait to dig in.
I know. I've been really trying to find the words, and we literally just did our reunion call on Zoom, all of us who joined, and there was 35 of us. And it's really interesting. It literally just happened 2 days ago. And what was coming up during that call was just, I was hearing a couple of things that were resounding themes. One was just the emotion that was coming through everybody in coming back together again after having experienced such a, I don't even know if the word transformative encapsulates all of it. It really was life-changing, and it happened in such a short, intensive time because the retreat was only, 4 days.
Yeah.
3.5, really,
I remember speaking to someone about your retreat just the day before you left or something. And I remember specifically saying Ellen is not going to return the same person, the same healer, nothing will be the same anymore. And I could feel it, that it was just so resonant for you.
Yeah, it really was. And, it really made me realize that your life truly can change in the blink of an eye. But when you're doing this kind of work and you're just sort of going into this type of container, 3 days doesn't sound like a long time, or 4 days doesn't sound like a long time, but holy moly, it's the what you go through, and especially with a group, it felt like we were literally jumping off a cliff together, or going into the underworld together. And I guess it kind of is an underworld because literally you're contemplating and reflecting and learning and studying about death, dying, and grief for 4 days, which I think to some people they'd probably be like, what the hell? Why would you ever do this? What would compel you, and, what was interesting to also hold in that call, or just witness that reunion call, was resoundingly everyone was expressing a similar thing and not being able to really integrate back into their life again. And I would not be surprised if several of them ended up quitting their jobs and just doing this, completely changing course. There was so much so many people sharing it was so difficult to come back. I don't know how I can, it felt so weird to be back at my job. Um, I like a lot of people actually shared like, people would ask them like, oh, you went on a retreat, how was it? And so a lot of people were like, couldn't even find the words. Like I didn't know how to really articulate it. And so they articulated it as best as they could. And then whoever they were talking to was like, oh, great, I'm so glad that you had fun. And it's like
Mm.
so like completely missing the boat,
Yeah.
because yeah, fun is not the way I would describe it. There was fun moments, but yeah, you literally just feel like you went down. It felt like a psychedelic journey, like for
Yeah.
4 days,
I mean, it's so interesting because as you're talking about that experience, I'm literally thinking about like all the people I know who go to Burning Man and come back like feeling so changed from that. And it is very, there is something like very psychedelic about that journey in and of
Mhm.
itself. And I can totally see how spending all of that time really thinking about death and grief and like what this life means and what these experiences mean that we're having in this life
Mhm.
um, would totally change your perspective on everything in the world.
Yeah. Because I mean, I'm not saying nobody ever talks about death. I think there's a lot of people that do talk about death. I think the thing that struck me also was I went into this going like, who is drawn to this work? I have no idea. I don't personally know any death doulas, but I'm so like curious about who would actually be drawn to this work. And I remember telling you, like, I don't know if I'm going to be stepping into a container full of like goths or if
Yeah,
they're like,
I forgot
like,
about that.
like I have no idea what to expect. And it ended up being like 35 plus the five who were actually facilitating, 40 people, like some of the most colorfully dressed, happy, beautiful, heart centered, like service oriented people I have ever met. And a large part of them were people from marginalized groups, people of color, queer people, trans people. It was like such a beautiful, joyous mix of people from all over the place and literally also like all over the country. But there was just so, I mean, we sang together. Like there was like there's so much love there. It was like shocking to me to even experience that again after such a short amount of time, to feel so glued and bonded to these people.
Mm,
Not in a codependent way, but like in a very healthy way, but just to have this depth of love for these people, having gone through this contemplation of death together. And it just like it really made me realize like as have come back, I've been really reflecting on fear
yeah,
and the fear that we experience in life. And I've started to come to this realization that like every single fear that we would experience in this life always tracks back to a fear of death. So if you think of like abandonment, it is this ancient fear that you're going to be left by your people, your tribe, your crew, and not be able to survive, right?
yeah,
Same thing with rejection. It's a fear of abandonment. Same thing, right? Fear of heights is the literal process of dying a painful death and believing that your death will be a painful process. Um, Fear of change, like stepping into the unknown where you don't feel like you have control, thereby like potentially meeting your end. Everything tracks to a fear of dying. So that is the ultimate fear that all of us are contending with, but it just shows up in different ways in our lives. And so I think in realizing that, I definitely feel like what's new for me that has always been here really, but I think I had to sort through a lot of mud and gunk and stuff to really reach it. It's just this realization that for me, this medicine work, working with the sacred mushroom, working with cannabis, working with the breath, like it's all about facing that fear of death. in some way, shape, form, or another, you know? And by leaning into that discomfort, leaning into the fear, leaning into what potentially could be painful, and just really like I don't want to go there, like leaning into that, you face it and you come out the other side and you're able to see your life from a completely different vantage point and really start to actually love life in a whole new way and love being in your body in this whole new way. And that for me was why this retreat was so transformative. It wasn't all the information that we were learning. I mean, that too was really powerful, but it was this one particular like experienced in day 2. At the end of day 2, we had to um go through a death meditation where they took you through 10 contemplations of death. And the whole purpose of this meditation was to really like meet that point of resistance, meet that fear, like whatever is causing you to fear death, you know, and we're talking about physical death in this, whatever is causing you to fear the end of your life. You know, we were asked to consider relationships. We were asked to consider the possibility that there's nothing after this life, you know, that it's a complete question mark, a huge void. And, you know, everything that we think about the afterlife is truly a theory. Nobody knows, you know, nobody has ever, you know, lived beyond. And I guess you could call like near death experiences kind of living beyond a little bit, but nobody's ever crossed over and then come all the way back, you know? So it's
Right.
still a big fat mystery, like what's going to happen to us after we die, you know? So there's fear there, right? The fear of the unknown. But we were asked to contemplate these 10 different potential fears to meet our resistance. And before we went into this meditation, we were asked, like, what is one sensory experience that you just absolutely love, that you would be so sad to not be able to experience again? And for me, you know, I mean, like we were going around the room and people were saying things like, you know, the feel of my mother's cheek against mine, or the feel of my dog's ears against my fingers, the smell of coffee percolating and brewing in the morning, that whiff of the ocean spray, the ocean air as I'm sitting and watching, you know, the waves. Like very, very specific. Like I was like so intrigued by the specificity and the way people were describing these moments. You were there, you felt it, like you felt what they were feeling, you know? There's one person that shared like, you know, the feel of the cello leaning against my body as like my fingers are on the strings. And I mean, being a cellist, I was like, oh my God.
I
First of all, I was like,
know. That's so crazy.
I was like instantly connected to this person. I was just like, oh my God, I have to know you, you know? And also I knew exactly what they were talking about because I felt that weight of that instrument against me, and it's a delicious feeling, you know? And so I shared, you know, like the salty crunch of fried chicken because I love fried chicken so much. And just like by the end of the 35 shares, I was bawling already, you know? And I'm even getting emotional as I'm talking about it again, like reliving this, because I just realized like it's not in those crazy peak experiences that we're always searching for that makes life worth living. It's all these like tiny little moments, you know, that are found in the everyday, like literally waking up and seeing the sun outside, or maybe not seeing the sun, but seeing fog outside. I mean, even that's just as beautiful and mysterious and fascinating, you know? Like just being in this body and
Yeah.
being in every moment is enough, you know?
Yeah, that is super interesting because I remember hearing about a study one time where they asked parents who had lost their children, like, what is it that they miss the most after their children had passed? And like across the board, every parent was like, the everyday things, like, oh, my kid used to run down the stairs every day and I used to like get frustrated by it, but now I miss that sound so much. Or like, you know, one
Yeah.
parent said their child used to go to the the back screen door and open and shut it just like repeatedly, constantly, and said that like they go back and do that now with the door just to like remember the noise. And it is
Wow.
those moments, you know, it's so
Yeah.
powerful.
It's so powerful. And if you think about your senses, like what you're describing right now, the sound of a door closing, which,
Mm-hmm.
nobody would ever associate with like love, right? It's just the sound of a door closing. And yet, the frequency and the sound waves of that particular sound
Yeah.
is a portal. It's a time machine to access the love that they have for this child that they can no longer hold, you know? And again, it's like it makes me
Oh my God,
cry.
I'm getting emotional too.
It's so powerful. Like, and I think when you think about it in terms of like, this is what makes up our entire life. Like we all wake up in the morning, we all have our like morning routine, we all like get up and get ready for the day. We all have our things that we do. This is what makes up life. It's, those amazing trips to far off places are awesome. Like again, these peak experiences, I'm not like busting on peak experiences. Those are sometimes necessary to disrupt our day and get us out of our rut so that we can see the beauty of the mundane. I think that's
Yes.
the purpose of peak experiences, so
Mm.
that you can appreciate brushing your teeth in the morning and smelling that coffee and hearing the door slam and all these things that we completely negate usually or take for granted.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful gift, that gift of being so present and connected.
Yeah, it's presence, right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what healing's all about to me. Like how do I be more present so I'm not ruminating about the past, freaking out about the future, but I'm just like right here
Mm-hmm.
enjoying my life where I'm at, not trying to plan forever, like I'm just
Mm-hmm.
here. And it's like working through these limiting beliefs or these programs that our bodies are programmed to kind of like defend ourselves from danger, defend our. I feel like that's what takes us out of the present moment. But the whole purpose of healing is just to get you right back into that present moment. And I think in
Right.
studying death and like really facing your fears, which to me, again, is synonymous with facing death, you start to really work through those limiting patterns, those limiting beliefs that take you out of the present moment because you suddenly realize like this is where it's at. There's really nothing else. And there's like literally beauty and magic in every single one of these moments. And like the first day, I think the first question that Elua brought to us was, what does a good death look like? And like nobody has ever asked me that question. I don't even think I've ever even like
Yeah.
posited that
I was like, oh my
myself.
gosh, what did you say?
I mean, for
I would have to
me,
sit with that.
yeah, it was a lot of sitting with that. I was like, I don't know what a good death looks like because we're all so wired to believe that death is bad,
Yeah.
you know? And if you think about it, it's like that's what's been in our minds literally since birth. Death is bad. Avoid death. Avoid any danger that's going to put you at the face of death, right? Your parents warning you, don't run too fast or like don't climb too high. You're going to hurt yourself
Yeah.
because, there's a fear of death there, right? And so we're programmed to fear death from day one. And yet, from day one, you're already dying.
Yeah.
You're already heading towards death. So there's something really, to me, fascinating about like being programmed to like fear this thing that you're already moving towards from day one.
And this thing that is so universal, right? Like we
Yeah.
all, there's no escaping it. Like we are
Yes.
all going to experience this and we are all going to experience loss and grief. And like it's so fascinating that that is such a deep point of connection and we never acknowledge it.
Yeah. It exactly, right? It's like it's the great equalizer. Death
Yeah.
doesn't know the color of your skin or how much money you make, or, it's coming for all of us. Or in fact, we're heading towards it, like we're walking towards it every single moment of the day. And so, you know, I'm now of the belief that you should start to talk to your kids about death, even like when they're
Yeah.
little,
Yeah.
like so that there isn't that fear, but that they recognize and honor and celebrate it as a part of life. Because you're experiencing death in so many different moments. You're experiencing a death every single day, right? At the end of the day when the sun goes down. There's like death all around us. There's like a
Mm-hmm.
letting go and an invitation is to surrender always, all around us. And yet we fear it so much. And guess what keeps us so trapped in our shit? you know, it's
Yeah.
this fear of death, a fear of letting go, a fear of surrender.
Yeah. Wow. So what did you end up answering to that question? Or what was there like a particularly profound response?
I mean, I think it was sort of this like rhetorical question, but then because the whole retreat, I mean, we were going through 12 different modules in the span of like 3.5 days. So it was a very, very accelerated kind of program. But we were watching some videos, some documentaries that brought up some really hard stuff. And so I remember the very first video that we watched was of an ICU unit in New York, and you were hearing the physicians and the doctors' perspectives and seeing like 5 to 10 different families who all had somebody who was in the hospital dying, hooked up to a machine in some way, like intubated, trached somehow. And these families are having to make these really difficult decisions about when do they stop trying? Like when do they stop treatment? When do they decide to, pull out the tube? When do they decide to trach the person or not? All these really hard decisions. And so it wasn't so much about like to trach them or not to trach them, but it's more like what I was seeing was like, wow, I'm witnessing so many families, whether it's the dying person or it's the loved one caring for the dying person, this difficulty to let go and the
Mm,
pain that comes from the difficulty to let go. And so what I was seeing in front of me playing out was just like, to me, that was not a good death because there was resistance there,
mm-hmm.
right? Whether or not you're the one dying or the person watching or witnessing your loved one die, there's resistance in letting go. And to me, I think the first way I would answer that question, like what is a good death, is a death that doesn't have resistance around it, or if there is resistance, which there naturally is, right? There's a how do I say it? There's a willingness to surrender
Mm,
and a willingness to meet that resistance and to breathe through it together and like honor it together, and an ability to let go when the time is right. Because in some of these families, they had their dying family member hooked up to machines for years after this
oh,
documentary. And to me,
oh, my
I'm,
heart.
it's like I'm thinking about like, first of all, this poor person, even though we have the medical technology to be able to keep a body alive, should we do that? Like, what does that do to a person who's stuck in a hospital bed for 2 years, hooked up to a life support machine? Like, is that a life? Is that quality of life? Like, you know? And also, not to mention the thousands of dollars being spent keeping this person alive. And in my mind, for no good reason,
Yeah.
except that perhaps the family's not ready to let go yet.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
um, yeah, it reminds me so much of like,
Hi, Hondo.
yeah, Hondo's getting worked up right now. He's very sensitive to energy, so he can feel the energy shifting as we're talking about this. Um, but it, you know, it really feels like, oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Let me just shut this door. It just really feels like the process of holding on, and this resistance of letting go. It's like we hold on for us, not for the person who's passing, you
Yeah.
know, because it's like grief is kind of like just the other side of the coin to love. It's just love with nowhere to go, and you know, and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it's such a difficult process. So it's like, I mean, I think we were talking about this earlier too, after you had just recently come back, but the idea that on paper everything is easy to agree to or to wrap your mind around. But then
Mhm.
when you're in the moment, the experience is so drastically different and it's so deeply, deeply painful.
Yeah. That was something that I think I found really interesting, and it was new to me. Like, we talked a lot about, the paperwork, right? And these orders, like, do you want to be resuscitated or not? Getting clear about what it is that you would want, getting clear about what you consider quality of life, and when
Mm-hmm.
quality of life gets disrupted to the point where it's like no longer um it's no longer like the decision that you would want to make to continue because your quality of life is so,
Right.
destroyed. Um, but in the dying process, very much like in life, in everything, it's not linear. So even though you may have like a piece of paper that says, I do not want to be resuscitated, if you're going through a death, like let's say, I mean, and most deaths are through illness, right? It's through disease. And it's not always the fastest process, right? It's a journey. It's a journey
Mm-hmm.
in itself, the whole dying process. So you in your grief and in your whole process of experiencing dying may continue to vacillate on that point. Like, you may wake up one day and just be like, no, I do want to live. I do want to be resuscitated. Like, please, and you may change your mind. And then a week goes by and suddenly, your perspective may shift. And so part of being a death doula, and I would even say like anybody who is going through the process of dying with a loved one, I think it's really about honoring the whole journey and honoring the fact that it's non-linear, and
Mm-hmm.
that your opinion and your perspective may continue to shift from day to day to day, depending on how you're feeling and what's happening, conversations you're having, all kinds of stuff. And so you kind of can't hold somebody to what they're saying at any given moment. You have to kind of be strapped in and along for the ride too. And that in itself could be a very painful process, especially if you're the one witnessing somebody dying,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I would imagine there's so much back and forth there. And then you're, you know, it's like because the process of grieving starts before you lose
Mhm.
someone in a lot of cases.
Yeah, it's called anticipatory grief.
Yeah. And so there's all of these energies mixing together, these energies of grief, of resistance, of sadness,
Mhm.
pain, you know, wanting to be supportive and also needing to be able to move through whatever is coming up for you personally.
Yeah. And also regret, right? Like, I think regret is one of those
Mm,
things that comes up a lot on either side of it, whether you are the dying or you're the person witnessing the dying. The regret for things not spoken or things not done, chances not taken, risks not taken. And so for me, I think there's such there's such a great space for people to begin to, I don't know how to say it, like consciously prepare for a death that they would want to have, where you're leaving this body and this life without any regret. You're saying everything
Yes.
that you're saying that you need to say in the moment. You're doing and taking the risks that you need to take without fear, so that there's no what ifs at the end of your life. You know, even if the end of your life comes earlier than you think that it will.
Yeah.
This is why living in the present moment is so damn important.
Yes, exactly. And this is such a profound space for healing because, again, it's like even when we're gone on these healing journeys and we're looking at, we spend a lot of time in our healing journeys looking at ourselves, at the experiences that shaped us, at our fears and, like, the subconscious things that come up. But so rarely do we put on the lens of, okay, at the end of this journey,
Hmm.
like what is going to matter the most? And then
Yeah.
giving ourselves the gift of this time between now and then to really fulfill whatever it is that we feel called to, in addition to doing the other healing work that will help us, like, along the way. But it's such like, it's a very deeply profound, like, perspective that opens these sort of new opportunities and channels in the universe.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to leave this life with a whole bunch of like, damn, I should have said that thing, or man, I should have taken that opportunity to go to this place, or you know what I mean? Like, I think that's where the pain comes through, or that's where the suffering comes through. It's like all the what ifs and all the all the ways in which I allowed my fear to take over and keep me from doing the thing, saying the thing, being the thing that I really felt like I wanted to, but was just too scared to.
Yeah, there's so much there.
You know?
Because I feel
Yeah.
like that list could be so long.
Yeah, exactly. But this is, I think, why the healing work is so important, right? It's so important to do the work to meet those fears where, head on, and just to like push against those
Hmm.
uncomfortable edges rather than running away from it. And I think oftentimes people think that, well, I could just do this by myself, but I'm really starting to come into a a belief that, like, I mean, it's true. Healing doesn't happen in a vacuum, and it doesn't happen on your own in isolation. But I really do see the value of having somebody with you, companioning you through facing your fear, facing your grief, facing whatever it is that, is keeping you from l- being liberated to like do all the things that
Hmm.
you're being called to do, but are just too afraid to. I mean, how, like, what better way to really work through that stuff than to like truly face your death? Like, imagining you at the end of your life, getting all your affairs in order, going through the process of just like preparing yourself for a good death, you know? And we even talked a lot in the retreat about what rituals you would want when you die. Like, how would you want to be buried? How would you want to memorialize who you are, like your life? What would you want to put into play? Like, what would your request be? And I think this is such an important thing to talk about because, particularly in this country, the idea of ritualizing death is starting to like disappear. People don't want funerals, they don't want
Yes.
memorials, you know?
Yeah, I've even experienced that in my own family where, and we talked about this too earlier. I was like, we had to have some conversations around that, because we recently lost my grandfather and he didn't want a memorial. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, we have to do this for us. We have to do this
Yeah.
for one another. We have to, like, it's not, on the outside, it seems like just closure, but it goes so much deeper than that.
Right. And even as we're talking about this, like I'm I'm trying to reflect and process like what would cause somebody to not want a memorial, to not want to be ritualized.
Yeah, for my grandfather, um, he said it was really, my grandmother passed like 13 years ago, and most of his friends had already passed, and I guess the friends that are still living are in New Jersey or Australia. Um, so he just wanted to be with his kids when he transitioned, and he got to be at home when he passed, which was like amazing and beautifully peaceful. I think for
Mm-hmm.
everyone. But at the end, he didn't want to have any kind of memorial or anything, and so we ended up taking it sort of upon ourselves of just everybody going out and spending some time together and like going through his old pictures together, just telling stories and just being there with one another, even though it wasn't formalized in any particular way.
Yeah. And like how did that make you and your family feel? Like what did that process actually bring to you guys?
It actually ended up being this really beautiful couple of days where we just sat down and we were going through some of his documents. And I mean, he had information on our deep ancestors. We found out information about family members that went all the way back to, on my grandma's side, Ireland and Germany, and my grandfather's side, Germany and London. And um, it was like there were letters we got to read about family members and stories we'd never have heard. He had the original, Ellis Island immigration paperwork for our family, or at least his side of the family. And so it was this very cool, just like beautiful process of sort of just discovery, because we didn't know what was in his things. We just had to, clear out his apartment. So as we were going through all of them, we got to just really learn a lot more about our family, and it felt like it really brought us all closer together. Um,
Mhm.
and we were able to sort of celebrate the lives of all these beautiful beings in our ancestry, because um, just by remembering them, talking about them, learning about them,
Yeah.
and being together. And it was just nice to be able to look through my grandpa's old photos, of my mom and her siblings when they were kids, and back before my mom was born. And um, it was just, yeah, it was a very connective and like peaceful and grounding experience. And I think actually there was some beauty in not having formality around it, because we were able to just sort of like come together when everybody was like feeling called to it, and there was no like, we have to be this way or show up and look, do this thing. We just were there. But I think that, um, in whatever process, I think in my personal experience with loss in our family, I feel very deeply that in whatever way that memorial or that experience takes place, like the important thing is just to gather and to be there together.
Right.
Um, because
Yeah.
losing those rituals is a huge part. Like if we hadn't done that, we would have just lost all of this family history to time.
Yeah, exactly. And like if you think about it, what occasion brings a family together other than weddings and funerals?
Yeah.
Not even births, not even birthdays. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it really is weddings and funerals. And so it's this like lost opportunity for connection if you end up, requesting or saying, I don't want a memorial, I don't want a ritual, I don't, to me, I feel like there's also this sense of like like a lack of self-love too, that I also kind of feel into for, you know, I wonder sometimes if like the sentiment or what the person's feeling is like, you know, don't make a fuss over me. I don't need anything big. I don't need to, be like celebrated or whatever. And like, you know, I I'm now, I think I used to be on that side of the fence, not about, funerals or anything like that, but birthdays even too, like, oh, I don't need a big whatever. But it doesn't have to be a big whatever. It's just, I think it's also honoring the fact that like you are this unique being that took up space in the world, that has energy, you're divine, and you've affected, you know, a group of people, whether it's your family, your chosen family, whoever you've touched in your life. And this is their way of like sending you off, into whatever the great beyond, like whatever is after this physical human life. I don't know. I think there needs to be this honoring of like, even if you were not somebody who had a huge social circle, it doesn't matter. I think part of this ritual also is just honoring the fact that you are divine yourself also, they in my experience, like funerals and memorial services have always either been Christian or Buddhist, and so there's always this formality to it, but also I felt like it was also going through the motions and not
Yeah.
quite so meaningful,
That's
and so
how the other funerals I've been to have felt too. Like no one talked to us about what
yeah.
to expect or what to do. So it felt like we were just sort of like being like pushed through.
Yeah, yeah, like, "Oh, we gotta have a eulogy, we gotta have a sermon, we gotta have
Hmm.
a da 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 da," And, like, I think this is also why these conversations are so necessary because the way you and your family organically chose to do it is so meaningful and so beautiful, and look at the connected the connectedness. I'm trying to find a word, like the connectivity or whatever. Um, Look how it connected your family together, and not just like your immediate family, but also generations back through these stories.
Yeah.
And whether he consciously wanted to do this or not, your grandfather was the catalyst and the bridge for, he was the one who made this all happen in
Yeah.
his death. So we saw some examples of people doing, creating rituals to honor the dead friend or the dead loved one. And there was this one woman who was so beautiful, like older woman who knew that she wanted to have a 3-day vigil at her friend's house. And so we were just like watching this video of these three of her friends or family members, these women cleaning her body, dressing her, shrouding her, strewing flowers all around her, and holding her body in one of their homes for a 3-day vigil where loved ones could come and basically say goodbye. And then they had a memorial service. And in this memorial service, it was just so nice and lovely because there was a sound bath at her feet. And then there's people who were dancing and kind of like performing almost like for her, And then there was somebody who was eulogizing her, but they were standing at her head. And so she was in the middle. And the whole
Mm.
thing just felt like it was a ceremony for her, not just for people coming to pay their respects or to say goodbye, but it was also for her. She was like a part of it. She was in the
Yeah.
middle of the room and all this activity was happening around her, you know? So it felt so nice. And there's another example of an artist who I think she lived until her 40s, died in Seattle or in an island close to Seattle, but she was an artist and, basically was creating new projects all the way up until her death, and was very, very into I forget the name of the performer, but the actress who was always doing those synchronized swimming things in like
Mm-hmm.
in old movies like from the 50s or 60s or something. And so all of her friends who were super inspired by her and her art got together, and somebody sewed costumes, somebody choreographed the whole thing, and then they put on this performance of a live synchronized swimming, but like walking, like not in an actual
Mm,
pool, but
that's
at a
so cool.
fountain. I was bawling. I was crying so hard because it was such an expression of joy and creativity that really celebrated this woman's life, and celebrated her in a way where they can finish off a project that this woman couldn't finish because of her death. And like, to me, what an amazing way to memorialize her and her life, and how she touched her loved ones, you know, just in her creativity. Like, that to me is, you don't need to have a traditional funeral. You don't even need to have a traditional burial. It's just, it really is what you want it to be. And I think people need to know that they have these options. I think a lot of this is just like, because it's so taboo, because it's so feared, we don't talk about it as a community, as a society. And so nobody knows what they can or cannot do. And then based off of, just their kind of background, religious, even minor religious affiliation, that ends up becoming their ceremony, they're like their funeral service or whatever. And it doesn't have to be that way. So,
Yeah, that's so fascinating because until you had told me about those rituals and those ceremonies, like I had only seen traditional like church funerals or
mhm,
no funeral.
mhm, mhm.
And yeah, it's so interesting because, you know, we don't give space for that conversation for our loved ones, even when we know like the transition is coming.
Mhm.
Um, but we also don't think about ourselves like how do we want to like how do we want to show up for our loved ones who are transitioning, like how do we want to celebrate them and like
Mhm.
hold this space for them, like in whatever container it is that they wanted to create, and it's fascinating to me to see these beautiful examples of where people are truly celebrating.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I feel like if I were to find some sort of common thread between these examples of people who are celebrated in this way, I don't know, the words normalized death just want to come through. I just feel like we need a normalized death. It is a part of life. It's a vital part of life. And it really is a part of our everyday. And so the more you can normalize it, the more you can accept it. And I would even venture to say celebrate it, because it is something also to be celebrated, like
Mm-hmm.
it's like this person lived and touched lives and, had an impact. And it doesn't matter how big or small that impact is. One tiny little impact has ripples outward for, it to infinity. It just continues to ripple. And that's the way energy works. And so, like, every single being is they need to be celebrated. You know what I mean? I don't even care, human or non-human,
Mm-hmm.
because their life affected us in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other really interesting thing that came up, especially for my family in losing my grandfather, was that like because we don't talk about death, we really don't understand how much like paperwork and technical
Mhm.
shit has to be taken care of.
Mhm.
And it's also like the celebration and like the true ritual and memorial of this transition and like this coming together in is so often like just sort of stomped on by all of these like logistical things that come up right after
Mhm.
someone passes. And then it's like I feel like these trends of people sort of like hurrying through the process or opting to put the memorial off until later so they can get through the paperwork and the technical pieces of it. and and there's no room for grief in that.
Yeah. Or the grief is just shoved to a side
Yeah,
or kind of put on the back
stuff
burner.
down, and
Yeah.
then it'll come back. Yeah. Yeah, and so it's really interesting also that they took you through a lot of the technicalities, even though, everyone specializes in their own area of being a death doula. It's
Mhm.
like just even knowing that information like really changed for me, even just hearing it from you when we were, you know, reminiscing about your experience was like, well, I really want to do things differently from like not just look at my life differently from this moment on, because that is absolutely true and the most resonant piece of this. But like when it comes to planning,
Mhm.
if I plan these things now, I give my loved ones the space to celebrate, ritualize,
Yeah.
memorialize, and grieve.
Yeah, 100%. Like I it's one of the biggest acts of love I feel like that you
Yeah.
can do for your family by facing your stuff and like just doing like Adam and I are about to create or like I downloaded a Lewis workbook that is basically like advanced planning for the end of life that takes you through all the things that you need to talk about, information you need to kind of like store like passwords. Like we now are in a digital social era, right? Where it's like we have
Oh my
like,
God, passwords.
yeah, email passwords and like, let alone bank
Oh
information and
yeah.
like all that stuff, like somebody in the retreat termed it adminishits, which I think is so fitting. I love that so much because it really is. I mean, nobody wants to ever deal with this stuff. And you're right. It ends up becoming, I mean, you have to deal with it. So in some way, I feel like I just literally had this conversation with a friend who was like, I'm kind of grateful that there was so much stuff that we had to do, like the financial stuff and the logistical stuff, the administrative stuff, because I didn't have to like face the grief,
Yeah,
right
that's
away.
so where my family is. And I just was observing this like happening and unfolding, and I was like, oh, this grief is not going to go away.
I know. It's just gonna come out in the
Yeah.
strangest and unexpected ways possible.
Mhm.
You're just prolonging the inevitable is really what
Exactly.
it is. And I'm not discounting the fact that sometimes you just like a little bit of escape is probably kind of, needed sometimes. And so I guess this paperwork does provide that. But also, yeah, you're prolonging the inevitable. And so I think we now know just based off of our own experience in healing, like the more you put off the feeling part, the harder it is to, face it later. It's just going to come back and become even more intense
Mhm.
versus just allowing those currents, those frequencies, the energy just to flow through you. And grief is not something that you'll ever get over. It's much like these wounds, like we we carry our wounds for life, and healing really isn't about getting rid of the wound, which is, I think, what a lot of us believe when we first get into this healing space. I
Yeah,
definitely for sure did. But to me, I realize now healing is in really befriending your wound and walking with your wound. And like, over time, the
yeah,
more you receive and honor and accept your wound, the less it hurts, the less it like takes your breath away, the less it impacts your
yeah,
life and rules your life. And the same thing's true for grief. I feel like grief is for sure a friend. I'm so grateful to have had grief in
mm,
my life and now understand and know how to like be with grief. Um, and I think that's also why I'm really feeling called to work with people in this way too, to like meet their grief and to hold it, hold it and give it space to take up so that they can just feel it and allow that energy to pass through and learn to really receive the gift that grief brings to you, which is just a deeper capacity for love.
yeah, yeah. I remember even last year after losing Mika, I like having these moments of just such deep, almost anguish. I was grieving
Mhm.
so much in some moments, and but also simultaneously being so wildly grateful
Mm,
for
mhm.
that, because it just every time was opening my eyes to how much bigger my capacity to love and how much deeper that love went even than like I probably even realized in the moment. And it's
Yeah.
this process, right? This cycle of like always going through that process of like feeling that grief, holding that space, and then finding a way to relate to it differently that then opens you up to deeper connection and more expansion
Mhm. And
in
greater
the,
joy.
yeah, and greater joy,
Yeah.
which is like, and much, much deeper love, but also
Right.
like a compassion for situations and people when things don't go the way you want them to or hope they will, or whatever that moment is. It's just like whatever you're grieving, whatever transition you're grieving, whatever space you're in, whatever fear you're working through, it's like grief is directly connected to your ability to be in that space of compassion in those moments.
Yeah, 100%. It's like I feel like it's a fast track to opening you up to really like live in a very full sort of way,
Yeah.
like it shakes you out of your numbness, it shakes you out of like your sort of like your homeostasis or your sort of your complacency, and it really helps you to feel. And though that feeling may be really painful and anguishing, the more you allow space for that to kind of expand or move through you, truly it's like it brings in every other feeling as well.
Hmm.
And I think people really, I mean, I feel like part of this depression epidemic that we have, particularly here in the States, is because people don't allow themselves to feel.
Yeah.
And it causes depression because if you're not feeling, whether feeling, joy or sadness or grief, like if you're not feeling, period, you're not in your human experience, like
Hmm.
you're not like living in the way that you're meant to be living here on this plane. And so you get depressed, and depression is usually like caused by a losing one's way, feeling lost, feeling like you're not directed in any sort of particular way, and kind of feeling foggy and cloudy and basically directionless and kind of um,
Detached.
detached, passionless,
Yeah.
and just like not really sure why you're here, you know? And I think it has a lot to do with feeling and not feeling.
Mm.
So to me, grief is like one of the biggest gifts to shake you out of your rut. Not to wish death on anybody, like not to wish a death of a loved one on anybody, but for me at least, like,
Grief as a healer. Yeah.
yeah, it really is a healer. It really does bring you to understand and see the gifts of your life.
Yeah. There's just this, and it can be applied to literally any situation in life almost. Because
Right.
I think the other thing we don't talk about a lot is, well, I think you might find it more if you're, on your healing journey, and especially if you're working with a companion or walking with someone through a certain, part of your journey. But especially when we are not in those spaces, we find ourselves in these moments of transition where it's like we are grieving, and in some cases quite deeply, and we don't even realize it. We
Mhm.
don't know what's causing us to feel shitty. We don't, even though it's like,
Yeah.
oh, and it could be something as small as like a job change or moving or anything, and it's like little things like that require us to hold space for grieving what is no longer, no matter what it
Yes.
was,
I
so that
totally
we can
agree.
show up wholly and be present with what we're moving into.
Yeah. That is such an important point. Death is a part of life, right? Like, just like grief is a part of life, is a part of the dying process. And we're constantly dying because we're constantly changing. We're constantly letting go of who we were before and what was there before and all. So you're totally right. It's like, yeah, I mean, I'm just I'm like really curious to see how our world continues to shift with more and more people stepping into this kind of work
Mm-hmm.
and more people like willing to talk about it. I'm coming to an understanding that, like, when I got back from the retreat, Adam had some friends here, and my first instinct was like, oh God, I don't want to be around people. I just need to, integrate and just be in silence. And I'm grateful that I drove to Arizona to the retreat. So I had the, 7 hours to drive back just in my own space to
Mm-hmm.
process and begin to integrate. But these two friends, like, I stepped into the house, and within 5 minutes, we were talking about this death doula retreat. One of them had lost her mother years back, um, who she was very close to. And then the other was in the process of, um, he's in anticipatory grief right now because his mother is terminally ill. And she literally just hired a death doula who's been
Mm-hmm.
walking with her through this process. And so I spent the next hour talking about death with both of these friends. And I was just observing, like, wow, I feel really energized, like
Mm-hmm.
what I was dreading, which was feeling super fatigued, like I didn't want to socialize, was in fact the opposite. Like the opposite was happening. I was like, whoa, okay, something's telling me I need to open up a space like a death cafe to start having these conversations openly with people and talk about grief and death and dying. And again, normalize death that is occurring in our everyday lives so
Mm-hmm.
that we can also better prepare for our physical death as well. It's just so necessary. Like the conversation is so necessary. And we're living in a world right now where most kids won't encounter death within their first, 10 years of age because of medical advances. And I think to some people, they would probably think that, well, that's great. We're doing great as a human, a human um, civilization. But I actually think it's to our detriment, because now death is this weird, scary thing that only happens to, like older people or people who are really unlucky, and I just don't think that that's true. That's kind of a warped way of looking at death versus just seeing it as like a natural process of life and a
Mm-hmm.
necessary process of life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like to be avoided at all costs.
Right, right.
And, I think the other really important thing about really this incredible healing perspective on death is bringing in the next generations into the fold, into these spaces of showing them that it's okay to have these emotions, to sit with
Mhm.
grief, to talk about what you're going through, and to see, to have them really see us modeling that for them. I remember even like when my city passed, we were at her funeral, and we were standing up at the coffin, and she had an open casket,
Mhm.
and having this moment where I was standing there and I was just looking at her, and I turned around and my dad was standing behind me, and he grabbed her hand. It's gonna make me cry.
Mhm.
And he started crying, and I remember feeling like I so rarely ever saw him cry,
Mhm.
that I just like didn't know what to do to help him feel better, which in itself, as I say it out loud, and I've like thought about that moment a lot of times, because there's so much conditioning that goes into my thought process in that experience too, right?
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
how do I help him feel better? But grief isn't always about feeling better.
Right.
It's about
Right.
feeling everything.
Yes. I think that is such a huge, crucial lesson for all of us. We are so conditioned to want to take pain away from others, to want to take suffering away from others.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes from a place of love, right? But also it comes from a place of
Yeah.
fear of that you don't want to hurt yourself either. So you don't want to see anybody else in pain. And
Mm-hmm.
there's this like inability to hold that. But I think when you start to realize that the pain, and again, this death is just a part of life, and that, when people are hurting and they're actually feeling and experiencing their humanity, feeling their heart, that's really what's happening. They're feeling their love. It's so needed, it's so needed for us to be able to have this compassion for one another.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
And those are like such heavy spaces for anyone, especially at a younger age, moving into a space where they have lost someone for the first time.
Hmm.
Opening that conversation with them, even just, you know, allowing them to, hey, do you have questions about what this means? Do you have questions about what we're going to go do? Like,
Right.
how are you feeling? What do you need? Can we check in with you? All of this stuff. It's like none of those, so certainly not in my family, none of those conversations were ever had. And so it felt like there's a lot looking back on it now, even for myself in particular, around my grandmother's memorial, because I just, in looking back, we none of us knew what to do in that moment, because we were just kind of
Mm-hmm.
being like shuffled through, like systematically almost.
Mm-hmm.
And we were young, so or younger, so it really didn't. we weren't part of the conversations around like how that memorial came together by any means. But in hindsight now, as I look back, I'm like, that can't possibly be what she wanted. Like,
Yeah.
and really feeling this like sadness that we didn't get to honor her the way that she deserved to be honored.
Right. Right. I know. I mean, that's why these conversations are so important, right? Because everybody's afraid to have that conversation. Like
Right.
how do you want to be remembered? Like how do you want
Yeah.
to be, how do you want to be buried? How do you want to live out the rest of your life, the end of your life? What do you want that experience to look like? What do you want? What does a good death look like to you? Like these questions that are just so important. And there's really I just don't believe that there's not too early of a time to begin to have these conversations. And I think about like you in that moment, like, had you been taught that like pain is okay, it's a part of life, death is a part of life, and your dad crying in holding, your Siti's hand is just him really loving her, and you're seeing that love. I think your experience as a child would be so different.
Right. It would be so different. Yeah. I mean, and it really takes me back to all these moments where it's like, I'm so grateful that we're on this path and that we're on these journeys, because I think about, my niece and nephew and like how we can start changing this for them
Mhm. Mhm.
to help them live fuller, deeper lives.
Yeah.
Um,
Without the fear
yeah,
of death, like
yeah,
looming over them. Yeah.
yeah. But it is this really interesting also paradox of like, okay, we're in the middle of these generations, right? So we have this honor of like walking with these beautiful souls, these children that are growing with us, and also we are navigating the expectations and the conditioning and all of these other things around death that cause the older generations to want to stay away from it, to want to avoid it. And so it
Mhm.
is really interesting place to be, to see these spans of generations. And but also what a beautiful place, especially as you like bring these experiences into your healing practice, and as you're working with people moving through these spaces of grief, in whatever capacity, that you have the ability to sort of see this like generational trauma, this even sometimes ancestral trauma, really being unlearned, and then
Mhm.
relearning this new this new path at the same time. Like there's something so special about that. It's like um it's such an honor to witness and to like even be able to hold in the limited capacity that I can hold that even in my own practice and my own experience, and just knowing that that's going to continue to grow and always be um, in my awareness. And it's
Yeah.
just forever going to change everything.
Yeah. Well, I'm super grateful to have this conversation with you here, and like to be able to share this also with everybody who's listening, and really just continue. I mean, to me, I feel like I am just stepping into this like awareness of
Mm,
why I'm here. And this is such a huge part of now why I'm here. And it's not to say that all these other pieces, don't play a role. I mean, I think all these pieces, it's like the tracks were laid, so
yeah.
that I could step into this work. And I think this is not just the work of a death doula, right? This
Mm,
is like the work of generations, as you were saying. Like it really is it's anybody who, and when I say anybody, it's all of us. We all experience death. We're all going to experience losing a loved one. We're all going to experience dying ourselves. And so the more we can just face that fear of talking about it, face that fear of dealing with it and staring at it, and, like the fear of the inevitable, I think
Mhm.
the better prepared we're going to be to actually live the lives that we're meant to live, And
Yes.
for me, that's where my heart is. I'm just like, God, we would all be fully in our purpose if we just faced our death together,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And that's, I think, what's going to also ripple out into those like future generations too. It's like how can we show them like it's okay to live fully? It's okay by, literally facing the fact that we're all going to die, and like addressing some of these like questions that nobody's ever asked of us or that we've never asked ourselves. And I don't know. I love the idea that this is something that is going to continue to ripple outward and really shift, you know, generations to come by just talking about it, just simply talking
Yeah.
about it. That's it,
Just having the conversation, asking
Yeah,
one question.
right, right. That's all it takes. And not shying away from it if your like little nephew or little niece one day asks like, "Hey Sam, wait, where did grandfather go or where did granddad?" You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's it you can completely change the course of a young person's life just by simply like addressing their question with honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you
Oh,
so much for having this conversation.
oh my God, thank you. I'm just like feeling just emotionally overwhelmed with like love and gratitude for this.
Yeah, me too. It's such important work, and it's work that we can all do, whether you have the title of death doula or not.
Yeah. It's the great connector.
Hmm.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, okay,
Okay.
I have one more question for you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, if there was one piece of wisdom that you took away from this experience that you would share even with somebody not on their healing journey,
Hmm.
um, what would that piece of wisdom be?
Without a doubt, I think the biggest thing that I took away from this was death is messy, just as life is messy. And so embrace the mess. The mess is actually
Mm.
where you're going to find the most beauty and the love. Don't try to make everything perfect. Even if you're somebody like we saw a whole video of a Buddhist priest who was going through his whole process of his own death, and it was messy AF. And it made me realize, like, man, if a man like this who spent his entire life sitting bedside to dying patients, he was also a physician, could have a death like this, you know, you just have to be in for the ride and to allow yourself to be present for every single moment, realizing that there's intentionality and meaning and beauty in every single moment, even when it is chaotic and messy as fuck. So embrace the mess of both life and death.
Mhm. I love that so much. It also just feels like I wish there was a better word for mess. Like I love the word mess, but it's also like kind of playful. I imagine like little kids with like finger paints, like but it's like for real. Like shit will come up that you cannot even anticipate.
Yeah. But I also love the finger paints metaphor because
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. It's colorful and the
Hmm.
color's going to bleed together and you're going to make a mess and you know, but there's joy in that, right? There's joy in that mess
Yeah.
and there's a creativity in that mess. It's like you just got to like
Be there
un-
for it.
yeah, like just
Yeah.
let yourself be there. and take it all in.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Yeah, thank you. We are so excited to announce our first ever medicine retreat, Land is Body is Land. It's taking place May 23rd through 28th in Costa Rica's Playa Azul. It's going to be a sensory celebration of embodiment, where we will spend 5 nights and 6 days giving ourselves permission to slow down, to listen and feel, to taste and smell, and to really dive deeper into our senses, to observe our bodies, to witness our bodies, and our relationship to the land. Healing doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in community and in relationship. And to heal or to become whole again, we must reconnect those disconnected parts of ourselves. So that means reconnecting to the land that is our bodies, really leaning in and learning and listening to the language of frequency and sensation that our bodies speak. And we also must reconnect to the land that sustains our bodies, learning to commune with the spirits of nature and the earth. And so we'll be visiting a biodynamic farm, exploring food, learning about our sacred relationship with food. We'll be journeying through breath work, receiving healing through Reiki and sound, and also journeying with the sacred mushroom. So we hope that you can join us. If you're interested, please fill out our intake form on our website, wearealldaughters.co. Again, our website is wearealldaughters.co. We hope to welcome you into our circle. Music for Woo New is composed by Adam Miller.